lying, cheating, arrogance, taking stuff that's not yours, telling people you'll do something but you don't really do it, and getting to the point where lying has become second language to you, maybe even the first. These are the types of low-life characteristics that are expressed in society today, and it's nothing new. The question is, what can we do about it? If we're surrounded by low-lives, what can we do if these low-life character traits perhaps sometimes show up on our own account? What if we do if sometimes the teachers and so-called leaders we have are low-lives? Is there a solution for them? Do we need to have empathy for low-lives? Or is empathy the cure for the low-life? This and much more is going to be discussed tonight based on the holy teachings of the Chazon Ish. And quite frankly, there's something towards the end that's the cure for everyone. Even the lowlife that doesn't know he's a lowlife and doesn't even want to hear about being a lowlife, at the end of this shiur, if he gets there, he'll find a solution, he'll find a cure and a motivation to cure all illness. Enjoy, share, support, and be holy. B'Shem HaShem na'aseh v'natzliach, shiur Torah, bruchim habayim. We're starting a new week. Baruch Hashem, we're continuing our series of the Jewish HaShkafa, the Jewish ideology, to try to get our minds in line with the Jewish sages, with the Torah, and continuing our teachings based on the Chazon Ish. Emunah and Bitachon is the Sefer. Tonight's shiur will be for the Refuah Shlema for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, and also for the Refuah Shlema for Avi Mori David ben Asriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael, and also all the righteous Noahides. May they all have success, Hatzlacha Rabba, in their Teshuvah, in their Maasim Tovim, and BeEzrat HaShem, all of us continue to elevate ourselves to become holy. Now, just as a brief update, the Pesach Helping the Poor campaign continues. Tonight, anyone that follows the channel by our dear Rabbi, Rav Ephraim Kachlon, would have seen the new video that was just published maybe an hour ago or so, of the extraordinary event that took place today in Israel, in Jerusalem, where 500 Avrechim, 500 Torah scholars, studied together for almost 7 hours to complete the entire Talmud Bavli, the entire Shas Bavli, the Gemara, 2,700 plus pages, or Dapim, which is really 5,400, all in one day. This is something that you can count the times that it happened throughout all of history. Very, very few times such a thing happened. Of course, there are certain scholars that complete the Talmud Bavli by themselves once a year. The average person that dedicates themselves to the Torah could complete it in 7 years, but to complete the entire Shas in a single day, that's not for a single, for an individual. This is not something that happened often throughout history, but today, Baruch Hashem, we did it with this group of 540 scholars. And of course, this was a huge undertaking. Each one of these Torah scholars got a gift from our organization to some monetary help for the holidays. Each one got at least 500 shekels. Some got a little bit more depending on the needs, but you could simply calculate the amount of money that went into this thing just simply based on the numbers. But even more so, there are many widows and orphans that are in need of help during this Pesach, so we're going to be continuing to distribute to help the poor, to help the orphans and the widows in Eretz Yisrael throughout these next couple of weeks. So anyone that wants to fulfill the mitzvah of helping the poor in Israel during this time of the year can go to the website bhpesach.org, bhpesach.org. That's the campaign website for this specific cause. In addition to that, of course, we always have our other campaigns, our other plans, the books, the USBs, all the other wonderful things that the organization does, but on that we're going to discuss other times. So last week, we had really an extraordinary insight from the Chazon Ish about lowlives. This is something that, in the English language, and I think just generally speaking, when you speak about someone and you consider them a lowlife, it's viewed as a derogatory term. Now, don't get it wrong. It's always a derogatory term, but it's not necessarily meant to insult somebody. This is simply a more of a status of where a person is, rather than trying to insult them to be something that they're really not. So the Chazon Ish gave us insights on what low lives really are and how to fix it is going to be discussed tonight. But of course, one of the most critical parts of any solution is to identify the problem, because many times you'll have different people doing different things, and when you identify that what they're doing is problematic, usually the average person will deny their fault, will deny their responsibility as a predisposition, as a defense mechanism, where they simply don't want to admit that they did something or they are doing something that's wrong. So, for example, when we highlighted some of the horrible statements made by Dennis Prager just a couple of years ago, where he, on one end, he's representing himself as the example of what Jews are, here in the English-speaking world, and he is in essence the representation of the Jewish people, while at the same time he is admitting that he is desecrating the Shabbat. He is admitting that he is violating the Torah, and really has no qualms about it. 1 second, we had a power outage. Let me just. All right, we got some people. It's back. Here we go. All right, very good. Okay, let's get our train of thought back again. BeEzrat HaShem. All right. So, the Chazon Ish gave us a completely new definition, a new way to look at what a low life is. Simply put, until now we thought of a low life as simply a horrible person, a criminal, somebody that's not exactly one you want to associate with, certainly not somebody you want to be. But at the same token, the Chazon Ish is not here to insult anybody. He's here, obviously, to teach us how to remove different lowly character traits that we ourselves have, how to refine ourselves, how to become better quality people, how to become a better light to ourselves, better light to our families, needless to say, a better light to the nations. This is not only something that helps Jews, this is also something that could certainly help non-Jews. But if a person denies the problem, a person simply doesn't think that they are a low life. They don't think that they have anything wrong with them. They view themselves from a arrogant standpoint of thinking that everything that they're doing is perfect. Then obviously this is a person that you can't help. So the first part of curing a problem, regardless of what problem it is identifying the problem, identifying that there is a problem. But at the same token, no one wants to view themselves as a low life. So that's what we spent nearly 2 hours identifying last week, of trying to figure out, what is this low life? What is it? Somebody that's related to me? Is it somebody that I know? Is it sometimes me? Is it you? Who is this low life? So these types of words can sometimes confuse a person to the point where they don't want to listen, they don't want to educate themselves, because they already have this negative connotation of what something is, and immediately they arrive at a conclusion. So this is one of the things that the sages teach us, never to jump to conclusions. And a person needs to know that when it comes to character trait development, it's not a pleasant process. It's not something that is going to make you feel good immediately, but rather it's something that's going to make you feel good after you've actually achieved something. So similar to hard work is never enjoyable until you complete it. And one of the things that the Chazon Ish taught us last week is that these low lives literally could be the people we see when we look in the mirror. They could be people that we love. They could be people that we care about. And of course, there are different levels of being a low life. There are certain people that are obviously horrible people, and there are certain people that certainly have weaknesses. Weaknesses that put them in a low state where, throughout the majority of the day or the week or the year, this person is, generally speaking, a fantastic person, but if you cross them in a certain way, if you say something to them, if you commend them in some way, and they're not a person that likes to listen to any type of criticism, then the lion comes out, or perhaps maybe the pig comes out roaring, and they simply act like animals. So of course a person needs to know their own weaknesses in order to solve them. Now, aside from that, a person needs to understand that there is a cure. There is a cure to any type of negative character trait development. Negative character trait, but it requires development. It requires a person working on that issue. If a person ignores it and thinks that in time this is going to be resolved, he's simply, living an illusion. I see this Facebook thing is doing the problem again. Okay, we're just going to ignore it and just continue. So the key is to understand that when the Chazon Ish is coming to us and telling us that there is this lowliness that a person can have that is brought upon themselves, by their own actions, he's in essence telling you, this is the problem, now here's the solution. So the first thing that a person needs to have in order to cure any problem is a motivation. Motivation, they have to have a motivation. Now, what motivation does a person have to have in order to remove this lowliness? Now, of course, you need to know that any type of lowly character, whether it's a lying, cheating, being, insulting to people, being intimidating, enjoying to scare people, enjoying to take advantage of people, enjoying to hit people. All of these things are certainly not only lowly characters, but they're also sins against the Torah, which a person is going to regret when they arrive at the Bet Din of heaven and they're judged for each one of these actions. But in addition to that, a person also needs to know that when they're removing these negative character traits from their life, with each and every single step, not even completely achieving it, but even a positive step in the right direction, where they're removing part of their anger, they're removing part of their stinginess, they're removing part of their arrogance. Each part will bring a certain amount of light, spiritual light, onto that person that will allow that person to become a better vessel for HaShem to bring his sustenance of happiness, of money, of joy, of all the good things that HaShem wants to give to a person. Once a person is purifying themselves as a vessel, he's now allowing himself or herself to become that vessel that is able and capable of actually accepting more of this good from HaShem. So the benefits of removing this lowliness from ourselves is not only in the eternal world, which is in essence everything, but it's also in the world that we view as everything, because the average person out there doesn't really consider heaven or hell as part of their day-to-day argument. The average person out there considers their life here on this earth, in this shell of a body, as really everything. Hence the reason why they invest all of their time into making money, into chasing, all types of materialism, into trying to get the most amount of possessions in this world, because they feel like as if they're going to enjoy these things forever. Also the reason why people become suicidal, because they feel like whatever negative thing happened in their life, whether it's a traumatizing experience that was brought onto them by evil people, or a traumatizing experience that a person brought onto themselves, either way, they feel like this negative feeling is going to be something permanent, and therefore they want to end it, thinking that life ends with this life. And anyone that has watched the movie that we've made, Gehinnom or Chibut HaKever, knows that this is as far from the truth as it gets. Life doesn't end after this life. Life in this world ends after this life, but eternity continues. What that eternity will look like all depends on what your actions were in this life. Now, the Chazon Ish told us that this spiritual light that Hashem wants to give us is something that is either going to be darkened by the lowly actions, or is going to be, going to be allowed to literally go through this vessel that Hashem has directly to each and every single person, and allow you to have all of the joy that's in this world. Now, when you see these Torah scholars that we had today, these over 500 of them learning Torah, and you see their faces while they're learning, you see their faces after they complete that study session, you would think, oh, this is the first time that they've learned Torah, in their life. But in reality, this is what they do every day. They don't do it as a group in that fashion with that particular goal, but in essence, they learn every single day, anywhere from 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But generally speaking, this day was not any different than any other day. Meaning that this sense of achievement is something that they could literally attain every single day. Yet if you go to work and you see, somebody that's in a business that you work in that's very successful, perhaps he makes, $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year, $5 million a year, whatever, everybody in their own level, you don't necessarily see that level of happiness and content in those very same people. Perhaps you see the pictures that people want to show you the illusion that they're happy, in Hollywood pictures that everybody has. But the people that really know what's going on behind the scenes, they know that many times the people that have the most amount of material end up becoming the most miserable people. The opposite of what these Torah scholars have. What's the difference? The difference is that this vessel that a person made themselves, that connects to HaShem, is not accepting the sustenance of happiness and joy in life. They may be accepting the money, but money without blessing is a curse. So the Chazon Ish is in essence trying to tell us that if we need a motivation to remove lowliness from our life, whether it's lowliness in other people or lowliness in ourselves, we have all the motivation in the world. What? That motivation is attaining happiness. Every single person out there on planet Earth is looking to attain happiness. They may think they'll achieve happiness by, having more money or having more possessions, more cars, more houses, more women, more men, more toys, whatever it is that they're looking for. But the truth is that anyone that's old enough and wise enough will tell you none of these material possessions will ever bring you happiness. So how do you attain happiness? Happiness is something that you're gifted by God if you've made yourself into a certain vessel that is capable of tolerating happiness, if you will. So the Chazon Ish now is going to take us to the next segment and trying to give us the cure. And the reason why I say try is because he can give us the cure, but the cure is only going to work for those few people that actually take it upon themselves. The source of lowliness, this baseness of the spirit, can be found in the spirit and not in action. The lowly actions are expressions of the baseness of the spirit, and the actions that bear evidence to the baseness differ. Some of them are coarse and earthy, such as eating in public and riding a horse through the city streets. Some of them are not so noticeable, such as using coarse expressions and low language, or being quick to curse or berate people, lacking a sense of shame and speaking out insolently, not being afraid to deny what's true or to lie, not feeling responsible for a person's own words or their speech. Such people are not worthy of learning the aspects of Mussar, of moral teachings, which are based on subtlety and fine points, and they will never find a cure to their corruption in the study of Mussar. Now, of course, we're going to explain everything we just read in simple terms. So the Chazon Ish first starts in telling us, where does this lowliness come from? Where could we find it? And quickly he tells us that lowliness is not something that you can see on a person. It's not something that's quickly identifiable. It's not something that, a person has a certain look and therefore you know that he's a lowlife. No. This is something spiritual, where you can actually see two different people. One of them looks like their head is proud and high, and they may not necessarily be such a lowly character. On the other hand, you can see somebody with their head down and, looking as if they're a lowly, humble person, but in reality, that's the bigger lowlife. That person is the problem. But he expresses his loneliness differently than the other guy. So he's telling us, first and foremost, that lowliness is not something that you can find physically, it's something that's in the spirit. And the actions that person takes are the expression of that lowliness. that's coming from the Spirit. These actions show themselves differently. Some of them are coarse and earthy. What does that mean, coarse and earthy? He gives us a couple of examples. He says a person that is simply like has animalistic behavior and doesn't even think twice before acting such a way. He gave a couple of examples that we discussed in depth last week. One of them was eating in public. Now, of course, if you go to a restaurant and you have a certain section that you're eating, and you're not one of these people that eats like a pig and just, throws your hand everywhere, and, there's a simply lack of manners, assuming you go into your corner, wherever that eating corner is, and you eat politely, there's no problem with that. The problem is when a person feels that they could make any place their restaurant. They simply decide that this bench in the park is their restaurant. Or they decide that while they walk to work, or while they're on the bus to work, they could just take a sandwich and start eating in front of people. This is animalistic behavior. Just like a bull or other types of animals are constantly eating, he feels like he can constantly eat. Why? He's hungry. He feels that if he's hungry, he should be able to eat. This is animalistic behavior. Why? Because if a person starts thinking what everyone else is going to see, immediately that person is going to realize that that's not necessarily something that they want to see. No one wants to see somebody else eat, especially if they're eating something with sauces, something with all types of juices, something that's very big, sometimes even bigger than the face. It's not a pleasing sight. I don't know why people, for whatever reason or another, don't notice this, but the reality is that people are so clueless of this that many times you have different commercials or different types of advertisements or movies or whatever it is, where they actually show people eating. Now, this is not exactly a appealing thing. I know that psychologically it could sometimes make another person hungry, but at the same token, if we are trying to improve ourselves, this is certainly not the way. So a person that takes other people's a viewpoint of them and realizes that if I am a servant of God, if I am someone that wants to look respectable, if I am somebody that wants to carry myself in with the best possible appearance, eating in public is not going to be the way I'm going to do it, because if you look at anybody that had a respectable position in society throughout all of history, you'll know that this is also something that they applied to themselves. This is the reason why, generally speaking, you're never going to see a president or a king of any country eating in public. You're never going to see pictures of them eating. You may have seen pictures of food in front of them, but you're not going to see them eating. Because one of the biggest nightmares that a public person typically has, especially a person of power, is if something falls on their shirt and makes a stain, or if something falls on their face and causes them embarrassment. So this is not such a foreign idea for people that care about what the public views themselves at. Now, in today's world where people don't care about themselves and they expose their own shame to society on purpose, obviously this is the opposite of what reality has been throughout all of the generations. Hence the reason why the Gemara says in the end of Masechet Sotah, page 49b, it says that at the end of days before Mashiach comes, chutzpah tizgeh, where there's the insolence, the chutzpah of people is going to be much greater than others, than other generations before it. So a person that doesn't care about eating in public is simply a person that doesn't care about how they're viewed publicly. And if they take the Torah into account, then they'll have to realize, as we said last week, a person that acts this way cannot be used as a witness in a Jewish ceremony. So if, let's say, for example, he has family members that want to get married, and he is known as a person that eats in public on a regular basis and doesn't care. He walks around with a sandwich on a regular basis. He eats in public on a regular basis. He's just one of these people that acts no different than a horse. Acts no different than a pig in one of these little farms where whatever you throw at it, he eats. that person cannot be used in a Jewish ceremony. Why? Because that person does not have the mannerisms necessary for them to represent the Jewish people in such a holy event. Now, this means they can't be a witness in a Jewish ceremony of a wedding. They can't be a witness in a Jewish court. They can't be somebody that you can rely on. So we see that this type of behavior actually is could be very damaging to a person's life without them even realizing. Another example that the Chazon Ish gives, and he gave it last week as well, is a person that's riding their horse through the streets. Now, of course, the average person today has no idea what we can do with riding a horse through the streets, because people, generally speaking, today don't ride horses unless they're in the Middle East or some other countries that still have this. But this is something you have to compare to people that, ride their cars really fast. I remember when I was a kid, there was always at least one or two kids every night that would zoom through the streets, making as much noise with their cars as possible, blasting their music, stomping on their brakes to make sure that everybody knows that they have a fast car and the brakes work, and they're making all types of streaks and they make racing. This is animalistic behavior. This is what we compare the horse riding in the middle of the streets to, where a person is obnoxious enough to do something in an inappropriate place, something that you can do anywhere else. You could do it on the highway, you could do it on a racetrack, you could do it anywhere else, but they choose to do it specifically there for the sake of getting attention, for the sake of getting people to notice that they exist. This is also a lowly type of behavior. Further, the Chazon Ish says that some people are not going to have behavior traits that are quite as noticeable as these. They're still going to be lowlives, and in fact, even bigger lowlives. But their behavior traits are not going to be noticeable. You're not going to see this guy eating in the middle of the park or on a bench outside of the office. You're not going to see this guy zooming through the streets with his brand new BMW or some other Ford GT car. You're not going to see him doing that. You're going to see this guy look perhaps even better than everybody else at times. But yet, the Torah defines this person as a lowlife. How could it be? He says that their expressions are going to be very different. Such a way where they're going to have coarse expressions and low language. Meaning that this guy could be a person that presents themselves as if they're a righteous person, presents themselves as if they're a humble person, presents themselves as if they're even a holy person. They carry themselves, it's the type of view, they put their head down, and they speak really low, and sometimes when you talk to them, they make pretend as if it's too loud, and it's hard for them to accept what's going on around. But in reality, the moment you cross that person, the moment you say something that rubs this person the wrong way, by not giving them enough honor, by not giving them the something that they believe you need to give them, immediately things change. And unfortunately, this is most common in the religious world. Certainly it's common elsewhere, but it's most noticeable in the religious world, where people identify that their religious leader, whether Jew or otherwise, is a fake. Is simply a fake. Now, in the Jewish world, unfortunately, I've had the experience of finding quite a few of these lowlives before I became religious many years ago, or even after, where they would present themselves a certain way. They would literally present themselves as if they are glued to the Torah, as if they care about Jewish people, they care about the Torah, but the moment the money stopped coming in, the moment that you simply didn't answer them the way they wanted you to answer them, all of a sudden their face changes, and sometimes even worse than you could possibly imagine. I remember there was a guy that presented himself as a rabbi, from France, who used to come to my office every week. Now this guy didn't make a difference whether I told him to come or not to come. He would simply come to the office and just sit in my office until I gave him money. He simply would not leave. Now, He always presented himself as he cared, as he loved us, as everything was good, and so on. But once my life turned upside down, I had medical problems, I had to go to the hospital, and everything went haywire. This guy stopped coming. This guy stopped caring. This guy, all of a sudden, he was on to the next customer. Now, when one of my family members approached him and said, "Listen, you've been coming to my son for years. Why don't you tell him something? Give him some chizuk, give him some hope, something." "Oh, no, that's not my job. That's not my job," he says. Meaning, well, my mom told him, "What is your job? To collect money?" He goes, "Yeah." And he had no qualms about actually saying this. Now, he was at such a low life level, he didn't even think twice about responding in such a way. Now, if that was it, I wouldn't even say the story, but it wasn't. Years passed, and Baruch Hashem, life got better, became very religious, started speaking and teaching the public, started helping people that were in similar situations that I was. And one day I did a lecture that exposed the falsehood that's in the wig business, where many people think that wigs are a kosher way to cover their hair in the Jewish religion, but they're not realizing that the wigs of today are not the wigs that the rabbis permitted a few hundred years ago. The wigs of today are wigs that no rabbi could possibly permit had they known where they're actually sourced from. In the previous generations, the wigs came from, either it was straw, it was animal hair, it was all types of other things that came. But today, the wigs are coming from people, but not just regular people. They're coming from India, which is part of their religion, is to donate their hair to their idols, meaning that the wigs of today, and by wigs I literally mean over 95% of the real hair wigs and hair extensions in the world today are sourced from idol worship. Now, this is not a theory, this is a fact. We've researched, we've identified, we even have people go and live in India to identify and interview people. It's simply at this point, it's after many years of research, it's conclusive that if you have a real hair wig on your head, you have idol worship on your head. You have something that came from idolatry, which is forbidden for all Jews. It's actually forbidden for non-Jews too, but even more forbidden for all Jews. Now, the problem is that many people don't want to accept this. Why? Because that means that they have to cover their hair with a hat or a scarf, which they don't want for different reasons. So when we came out with this, this is probably 6-7 years ago, for the first time, or even longer, for the first time, Baruch Hashem, it created all types of, comments and so on. And one of the people that commented in a very negative way was this so-called rabbi, telling me that, I don't know what I'm talking about, and I was, I'm wrong for what I'm doing. And I told him that, I have evidence. I mean, you don't want to listen to it. You don't want to acknowledge it. Fine, but you can't say it's fake. He said to me something that I couldn't believe. He said to me, "You were better off before you did tshuva. The biggest mistake you ever made was doing tshuva and becoming religious." And I said to him, "Are you kidding me? What do you mean? I used to violate Shabbat. I used to, not observe Torah. Why would observing Torah be a bad thing?" Because, you were much nicer back then. You were much nicer. I said, but the only thing I was doing was just giving money. I was gonna go to Gehinnom. Because, this generation, the only thing you need to do is to give tzedakah, to give charity. That's the only mitzvah that you have to do. Now, obviously, this guy has become such a lowlife that he has changed Judaism into a business. Into a business where he literally says, and he believes, that the only thing you need to do is to collect money from people. Now, of course, I'm not really sure if he himself observes the Torah, observes Shabbat, eats kosher, or does any of the things he presents himself to be doing. But this was one of my experiences, my personal experiences with a real low life that I viewed as a righteous person for years. Now, this, of course, is not only something you find in Judaism. I don't need to give you a list of all the low lives that you find in Christianity, in Islam, and all the other places out there. The list will start and the world will end before that list ends. So the reality is that low lives appear in all shapes and colors. But one of the things we have to understand is that this lowlife is not necessarily going to be so obvious to everybody. The lowlife is going to sometimes present himself as someone that looks and acts as if they are a holy person, a good person, an honest person, and it's only after we spend some time and put some attention to the matter to really identify whether this person is really truly a lowlife or not. Now, one of the things that you'll see these people do, as the Chazon Ish says, is you'll see these people make coarse expressions and low language, or being quick to curse or berate people. What does that mean? Simple. This guy could have been a friend of yours, could have been your rabbi, could have been some type of motivator, some type of spiritual leader, some type of coach, or whatever you want to call them. But you see these people speaking like, what people like to say, they speak like truck drivers. They curse, they have disgusting language, they have potty mouth, they have simply foul language, they insult other people for unwarranted reasons. We're not talking about someone that's an enemy of God, and therefore it's a mitzvah to actually insult such a person and make fun of such a person. Someone's an idol worshiper, it's idolatry in general, it's a mitzvah to insult such a thing, simply because these are enemies of God. These are enemies of your Father in heaven. But I'm talking about simply a person decides that this guy that's in front of him or somewhere else, since he is not accepting of their opinion, since he is of a different tradition, since he has a different way to look at things, therefore he's a loser, he's a this, he's a that, or perhaps a person that doesn't want to support their cause. They start cursing them and saying their children are going to be such and such and their wife is going to be such and such. Now obviously, if you were ever a witness to such a thing, then the first thing you should have done is run away from that person. Why? Because at that moment, HaShem gave you a get out of jail free card. He gave you a free ticket to simply get out by showing you clearly that this leader that you have is not who he presents himself to be. Is not this holy person. Why? Because this holy person could have never said such things. Now, this is sometimes something that you will see in at work, in business, where a person will present themselves as if they care about the customer. Oh yeah, the customer is always right. I love my customers. I love the workers. But the moment somebody crosses them, the moment somebody doesn't pay on time, or the moment somebody leaves them and doesn't want to do business with them for whatever reason, all of a sudden you see these people come out with and start insulting and cursing and yelling and acting literally like beasts. Now, this is not something that is new. This is something that was always there in that low-life person, only that this is the time that he expresses that lowliness. So that type of behavior can sometimes be in ourselves. Sometimes a person could get so upset at something that they could actually start acting no different than the person I just described. Hence the reason why this low life can sometimes be a character trait that a person himself has to work on. It's not always the person that's next to you, that's in your life, that we have to look at. It's also sometimes it's ourselves. So each person has to listen to this and say, wait, did I ever do that? Did I ever act that way? One of the most common ways that that such a thing happen is when a person has an argument with somebody that's really important to them. Their spouse, their partner in business, people that usually you spend the most amount of time with, and that are usually the most comfortable with, tend to be the ones that unfortunately get the all aspects of you, all of the negative and the positives of you. So many times the wife of a person or the husband of a person is going to hear who she really is or who he really is. So She may present herself as the community tzadikah, the righteous woman. Everyone is welcome. She always wants to have guests. She's always smiling. She's always welcoming. But everyone notices that her husband never smiles. And they figure, you know what, it's probably his personality. He's probably, I don't know, he's probably just, that's his personality. He's probably doesn't feel good. The reality is that he may be miserable because of his wife. She is happy, but she's happy on his account. All of these guests don't realize that he has to work 2 jobs just to afford all these guests. But she doesn't care because it's important for her to look as if everything is doing so well that she could host as many guests as possible. Or it could be like one of these situations where she's nice to everybody else except her husband. She's nice to everybody else except her kids. Or it could be obviously the opposite, where the guy could be the gracious hosts everybody, but his wife, he won't even give her a few $100s for shopping. Why? No, you should be happy with what you have, but I don't have enough. Well, you should be happy with it. Everyone else, including himself, he's large with, he's generous with. Himself, no problem to spend money. But his wife, sometimes there's these low lives that treat their wives like they're maidservants, like they're cleaning ladies. They don't want to give them an allowance, they don't want to give them anything, and it's obviously a very, very horrible thing that a person can do, not only to their marriage, but just simply to their life. So, the public views this person as, oh wow, he's so generous, he invites everybody, he has all these parties, he's such a nice guy, and then everyone is surprised that he got divorced. And they usually blame the other person. Why? Because from their perspective, he was a really good guy, he's a really generous guy, so they assume that the other person did wrong. This is the reason why it's always a bad idea. It's always a bad idea to get involved in a marriage of people without actually knowing both sides. Without knowing both sides, you're guaranteed to have the wrong assessment. Because each person has their own version of the story, and then there's the real truth. So there's his version, there's her version, and there's the actual truth. So if you only hear his version, or you only hear her version, you're guaranteed to hear falsehood. And if you're going to allow yourself to believe that falsehood, not only are you falling for a lie, but you're actually making a sin. You're actually making a sin, which is called Lashon Hara. So, and Rechilut it could be as well. So, a person that presents themselves as if they are a leader, especially in the spiritual world and in the world of religion, can sometimes be the biggest lowlife. How do you know? How do you know if they're a lowlife or not? Simple. What do they spend their time doing? Aside from when they see you and they say hello and they meet and greet, what else do they spend their time doing? What else do they talk about? What else do they talk about? Now, one of the things that I found that is always a common denominator among righteous people is that they spend their time learning Torah. That's how they spend their time. They're learning, they're developing themselves, they're increasing their servitude and their knowledge of God. That's what they spend their time doing all the time. Now, as far as the other things that are out there, whether it's to family or it's any type of financial issues, usually they keep everything to the basic minimum. Whatever is necessary, they do. But their main focus in life is learning Torah in order to serve God. Now, if you talk to people like this, you'll see that many times, unless you know Torah, you're not going to have anything in common with them. You're not going to really be able to have a real conversation with them, simply because they're going to be the only ones that talk. You're not going to have much to talk about because they're not really necessarily interested in your baseball, your football, and all of the other things that you're doing. But you will find that these people are the most wonderful people on planet Earth. They're always out there to help. They're always there to do good. They're always there to produce more into the world, to bring more good to the world. So they're very, very different than your average person out there that likes to talk about materialism, other people's lives, and all types of other meaningless topics. Now, the scientific world has an anomaly, something that is unusual. They don't really have a legitimate explanation for why it happens. There are theories, but they don't have a confirmed reason of why this happens. In the world of elephants, the elephant, at some point, the male elephant decides that he's going to become aggressive. Now, this elephant puts himself in such a position that all of the other elephants, both males and females, simply stay away from them, knowing that anyone that gets close to this elephant, their life is on the line. Now, how would they know? When the elephant wants to do this, this is typically with the, not typically, this is only with the male elephant. What they do is they exude horrific smell from their body in order to present themselves in this aggressive state. And the scientific world doesn't really have an answer of what this is, why this happens, why this, if it was for mating reasons, then obviously there are other things that happen. If it was for dominance, other things happen. They're not exactly sure why this smell comes out of the elephant, and then everyone runs away from it. And anyone that comes closer and in essence breaks the boundary usually does not survive. Now, while we're not here to study elephants, we can learn from them. The person that doesn't have their low-life traits show on their sleeves, where they're not obvious in their behavior. They're not the typical person that, is eating in public and is, cussing up a storm and is just an obnoxious person. No, they're the person that is usually the more reserved type of low life, where they're not going to do anything that everyone else in the world can see at all times, but the moment that they want to express their low life state, everyone knows. It happens in the same fashion. It happens in the same fashion where this person could be viewed as a nice, even righteous person. But the moment somebody disagrees with him, all of a sudden, their potty mouth, their disgusting behavior, their animosity comes out in such a fashion, you can't help it but hold your nose of how disgusting this is. This is something that, unfortunately, we've seen when we have exposed certain people that are clearly lowlives, certain people that are viewed as religious leaders, whether it be Manis Friedman, or be Dennis Prager, or be Ephraim Goldberg, or be different segments of Chabad, or other people. And although many people appreciated the insight of things that they didn't know that Ephraim brings Christian missionaries to the synagogue. They didn't know that Manis Friedman tells people things that are against the Torah. They didn't know, Dennis Prager is not even a Shomer Shabbat Jew. They didn't know these things. So when we expose these things to the public, generally speaking, most people appreciated this. But you always will find those people that fight against it. And they don't fight against it in the traditional way. They fight against it in the most horrific way. First, they present themselves as usually much more religious than you. They present themselves as usually much more righteous than you. But yet, they behave like pure animals. They start cursing, insulting, publicly shaming, and doing all types of things that even if you were speaking about a common enemy, you wouldn't speak that way. On one hand, they tell the public, oh, we love all Jews, we love everyone alike, we're welcoming, we're wonderful, you shouldn't speak in a negative way. But the second they hear you speaking out against one of their own that showed themselves worthy of being spoken against, all of a sudden, this love for Jews, this love for their brother, this love for just anyone disappears into the wind as if it never existed. They literally insult you worse than even your enemies insulted you, and in such a fashion where you cannot believe that this and this came from the same person, this and this came from the same community, this and this came from the same world. That's the low life that the Chazon Ish is trying to highlight here, where there are some that their behavior is not noticeable, but they'll be quick to curse and berate the moment you trigger them. The moment you show them that you're not on their side, you're not supportive of whatever they're doing, all of a sudden you become enemy number one. And this is very, very unfortunate because it creates a lot of hatred for unnecessary reasons. We don't always have to agree on everything, and there are certain things that are simply common truth. There are certain things that we're simply going to disagree on, but you don't necessarily need to be an enemy. But people make you an enemy. Why? Because if you don't join their bandwagon, you're an enemy. This is obviously the opposite of what Torah is supposed to be. On the other hand, there are people, there are enemies. Like if we expose somebody, we're exposing them because they are an enemy. They're not an enemy of us per se alone. They're an enemy of the people because they're doing things to mislead the people. In essence, our exposure of them is to warn the people from them. So when somebody like Dennis Prager, for example, presents himself as a good presentation of American Jewry, in so many words, presenting himself as the Jewish world or a Jewish leader, yet at the same time, he tells people that he drives on Shabbat. He tells people that things that are against the Torah. He tells people that pornography, if it doesn't destroy a marriage, it's perfectly fine. It's not a bad thing. This is an enemy of the people. And in fact, it's not even just an enemy of the Jewish people. It's an enemy of society. Because while some of the things that he says sound cordial, intelligent, sound even rational and simply good, those things that are positive are really the wrapping of the poison that's inside them. Now, this has nothing to do with his political viewpoints. I care less about the political aspect. You want to listen to politics, you go to politicians. What I'm talking about is if somebody presents themselves as a political figure, let them talk politics. If somebody presents themselves as a business, let them present business. Science, present science. But the moment you present yourself as a religious leader, that means that whoever follows that religion has to view you as their brethren, as a person that they can learn from it if you're a leader. Now, if you are in a Jewish world, we have endless amount of leaders that preceded you, that identified exactly what the Torah says and what it doesn't say. So when you say that you are, on one end, a Jewish leader, while on the other end, you're contradicting all of the leaders that preceded you, and you're minimizing them as if they are nothing, as if you can contradict them without concern. You can contradict the Rambam, you can contradict Rashi, you can contradict the Gemara, you can even contradict the written Torah because you feel and you believe that your opinion is of the same value and same weight as some of these giants, then obviously you are an enemy of the Jewish people. Now, if he kept his conservative beliefs in politics and so on as such, we care less about even mentioning him. But the moment that he presents himself as a Jewish mind, where people can learn about Jewry from him, where he writes commentary on the 5 books of Moses, where he speaks about it on a regular basis, that's when we realize that this is a common enemy for all Jewish people, because anybody out there that is viewing him as a Jewish leader and is going to listen to him say that pornography is good, and in fact that Judaism has no problem with men thinking about other women, which is 100% a lie, because the Torah says clearly in one of the most common verses in the entire Torah, a verse that every 5 or 6-year-old child knows, which is the Shema Yisrael. Every day you say the Shema Yisrael. That Shema Yisrael has a couple of paragraphs. Now, part of that paragraph is the part where it talks about the tzitzit, where Hashem tells us, "V'lo taturu achei lebavchem ve'achei einechem," that you don't follow what's in your heart and what's your eyes see. Meaning that you cannot allow yourself to look at things that don't belong to you, things that are inappropriate, things that are not modest, and then follow them. But yet this clown Dennis, who presents himself as someone that is worthy enough of writing commentary on the Torah, says, no, there's no problem in a Jewish world about saying anything, thinking about pornography, thinking about immodest things. There's no problem. Now, anyone who watched this, who listened to this, and I'm sure he said it more than once, since he himself admits that he talks about it on a regular basis, thinks that Judaism is a joke. He thinks that Judaism is inferior to Christianity and to Islam. Why? Because you're not going to find a Christian or a Islamic leader say such nonsense like thinking about immodesty, thinking about immorality is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. You're never going to find a single Christian ever saying that. You're never going to find a single Muslim ever saying that. Even though the rest of their beliefs are problematic, are false, are idolatrous in some cases, you're still never going to find them crossing that line. Hence the reason why you have literally people from those religions speaking out against this clown Dennis Prager that presents himself as if he's the Jewish leader, and yet in the Jewish world, I'm the only guy out there that's talking against him. Now, you would think the rest of the Jewish world would celebrate and say, oh, thank you, Yaron Reuven, for exposing this clown. We're all going to stop donating him. We're all going to stop watching him. We're all going to stop supporting him. But what do you have? Silence. Now, of course, there's the few fans that say, thank you very much for exposing this clown. I didn't know he was that bad. Very good. I'll share this. Yes, of course you have that. But when you have people show this to some other religious leaders, their immediate reaction is like, oh, come on, no, it's not that bad, or it's not this, and they try to justify it. They try to say, oh, what happened? How come if you go to a mosque, and you tell them, in the name of the Quran, it's not a problem for a Muslim to think about immorality, to think about pornography. It's not a problem. It will be a surprise if you survive your life that speech and they don't stone you to death. They'll literally take the cinder blocks and throw it at the speaker that says such a thing. If you go to a church, Catholic, Christian, doesn't make a difference. You go to a church, tell them, in the name of the New Testament, it's not a problem to think about pornography. It would be a surprise if you're not hung just like their Jesus. Why? Are you out of your mind? Who thinks like this? Now, of course, even the people that do think inappropriate things, do think about immodest things, they all know that it's wrong. They still do it because they don't care and they don't realize there's going to be consequences, but none of them actually, not a single human being actually thinks it's perfectly fine, needless to say, while you're married. But this clown, in the name of Judaism, his version, of course, thinks it's perfectly fine. This is a perfect example of a lowlife. A person that's so low, he doesn't even realize the stench that's coming out of him. At least the elephant does. So perhaps we can compliment the elephant versus Dennis Prager. So now, the Chazon Ish continues, and he says that this type of lowlife will lack a sense of shame and speaking out insolently. Literally, even a better definition of Dennis Prager and some of the other clowns. He's not going to have any shame. He's not going to have any shame whatsoever to speak with such confidence that doesn't belong to him. The Torah is inside our Siddur. Many people think that the rabbis just conjured up a bunch of things and they made the Siddur. The truth is, the sages, Anshe Knesset Agdolah, took the teachings of Avraham and made it the morning prayer. The teachings of Yitzchak made it the afternoon mincha prayer. Talked the teachings of Yaakov and made it the night prayer. But in addition to that, they took different parts of both the written and the oral Torah and added them to the Siddur, to the prayer book, where the vast majority of the Siddur is Psalms by King David. Now, although King David didn't write all 150 Psalms, he's the one that compiled them together into 150. Some of the Psalms were written by Adam HaRishon, Moshe Rabbeinu, and other righteous people throughout the ages. But David HaMelech put them together and made the book of Psalms, Sefer Tehillim. But in addition to Sefer Tehillim, there are different verses that the men of the Great Assembly put together through their Ruach HaKodesh and their prophecy, where they knew that these words make special sounds that open specific gates in heaven if they're said at specific times during the day. In addition to that, they inserted different teachings of the oral Torah for us to constantly recite in order to engrave these teachings into our lives, into our hearts. One of them is one of the things we say every morning. It's a Mishnah that says, Az panim la Gehinnom. Every day, before we even get to Shema Yisrael, before we thank HaShem for the tzitzit, before we do the Amidah, before we do some of the most critical parts of prayer, we're reminded, Az panim la Gehinnom. If you are an arrogant person, an insolent person, you're going to go to Gehinnom. That's what happens to people that are arrogant. That's what happens to people that act as if they are better than everybody else. Act as if humility is only for the weak. You know, sometimes young bachurim, young people, send me messages for advice, send me messages asking me, how do I do this, how do I do that? And Baruch Hashem, I try to help everybody. But once in a while, there's the same type of question that really shows you where the person stands, even if they only use a few words, based on their question. Now, if somebody asked you, how do I improve my marriage? Now, you know that person cares about their marriage, has issues in their marriage, but wants to put more investment into this marriage. Good. If a person says, Rabbi, can you give me some type of segula to make more money? Then you know this person either is having financial problems, or is money hungry, or both. Okay. If a person says to you, how do I learn 7 dapim of Gemara per day, so I complete the Shas once a year, like Rav Kanievsky, or some of the other Talmidei Chachamim that we know? Now you know that this person has Torah on their mind and has spiritual achievements as their priority in life. If a person asks you, how do I become humble? Now, while you would think that that means that this person is already humble, perhaps is on their way to humility, the truth is, what it tells you about the person is that they're as far from humility as almost as far as you can possibly get. Why? Because if they're asking you how to become humble, that means that they're not humble. And in fact, they're so arrogant, they cannot find a reason to justify being humble. They view whatever they have as so superior to their peers, to the people around them, to the world around them, that they have no idea, why would I even be humble? I could speak really well, I am tall and handsome, I have money, I have this, I have that. What do I have to be humble about? Forgetting that their maker is who gave him everything and can take everything. Forgetting where it all came from. Forgetting its limited value. Forgetting that just one small little ingrown toenail can remove all that happiness that they pretend to have. Just one little idea can disprove all of their ideas that they have. One little bad investment can remove all of that money that they have, and so on and so forth. All of these things that they hold pride in, they don't realize that they're only a click away from losing everything. So when a person asks you, how do I become humble? You have a very, very critical case in your hand. It's a person that is so far from humility, they have no concept of why they would even be humble. Now, for such a person, it's important to give them a reality check, but you don't have to do it yourself. Usually the best thing to do is to provide them a lecture, but not just any lecture. Don't look for a lecture that says, how to be a humble person. I don't even think there's such a lecture exists. The best lecture is typically to show the lowliness of a person, where a person, any person, really stands, which is the teachings of Mussar, usually about reward and punishment. Gehinnom, kafakela, chibut kever. Why? Because once a person understands what's eventually going to happen to their 150, 200 pounds body that they have at some point or another, and their bank account and everything that they have, they'll realize that, what am I really arrogant about? The ideas that I have, HaShem gave it to me. And even the money that I have, He gave it to me. The wife and kids, He gave it to me. The husband, He gave it to me. Everything I have, He gave it to me. What do I have to be arrogant about? Even more so, if a person has a good memory or is really smart. Do you know that there's one of the greatest chachamim in our generation today? One of the greatest chachamim in our generation today was poised to be the Rishon LeZion. If it wasn't for this brain aneurysm that happened to him twice. An extraordinary chacham, wrote dozens and dozens of books. Literally, each book, 700 to 1,000 pages each of wisdom the world has never seen before. Rabbi Ephraim used to study his Torah when he was still young, and he couldn't believe that this wisdom lives in our generation. When he finally met this Rav, he was expecting this Rav to be like someone that was floating. He couldn't believe how humble this person was. But this Rav had a brain aneurysm, and he forgot everything he ever learned. The only thing he didn't forget is his good character traits. Extraordinary character traits. He forgot everything though. And he had to learn everything from the beginning. He had to learn the weekly parasha from the beginning. The book of Genesis, Bereshit. He had to learn Parashat Noach. Just like a 3, 4, 5-year-old boy and girl learn about Noach. He had to learn about Noach. He had to learn about Avraham Avinu. And I myself witnessed him giving a shiur in his Bet Knesset, and he confused Noach with Avraham Avinu. Now this was a giant chacham. He forgot everything to the point that he had to rebuild everything. Eventually he built, and he had a second brain aneurysm. And he forgot everything again. Now, just the thought of having the ability to write dozens of books, thousands and tens of thousands of pages of new material in the Torah world. Everyone knowing you're going to be the next Gdol Hador, you're going to be the Rishon LeZion, you're going to be the biggest rabbi in the world, and then you lose everything. And you have to start everything again. That alone can drive a person mad. He didn't go mad. He tried again. He built again. He lost again. And he built a second time. And Baruch Hashem, he's growing little by little. He's certainly much better than he was when I first met him, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But I can tell you that this person if you meet him, you'll think like he's an average person, not a big deal. He is, he learns Torah, he's a religious person. Unless you know who he is, you're not going to realize that he wrote more books than I have in my library. He has more wisdom in him than what you have in entire kollels. He lost everything. Just like that. Twice. So, any young man or woman that has anything has to understand that all of it was given to them from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And all of it can be taken away. Just like that. Sometimes it's a test, like it was to him. Other times, it was a rebuke, it was a punishment. There was a wicked woman that used to be religious and then left the religion and decided to make it her life, a life's mission to make fun of Judaism. And one time she took a pair of tefillin and put it around herself. In horrible ways, publicized the picture. Caused major commotion in the Jewish world. But that commotion was silenced shortly after, when she got into a car accident and she couldn't move even a finger in her body. The very same body that she used to desecrate God's name was no longer able to move. Now, of course, you can say, oh, wow, that's too bad. No, there's nothing bad. En shalom, Hashem amar l'reshaim. No peace, Hashem said to the wicked. No peace. Now, of course, everyone has their timing. She got it when she got it because she still has an opportunity to do tshuva, to fix her life. Even though she has less tools to do it, certainly she has more reasons to do it. On the other hand, if Hashem didn't do it to her, she could have lived her life and made, literally, sins that she cannot even fix. On the other hand, she could not get punished and live a life like some of the people we exposed that continue to desecrate God's name and become a lowlife with one ticket to Gehinnom and nowhere else. So the Chazon Ish says that there are certain people that are such lowlives that they've lost their sense of shame. The Gemara in Masechet Nedarim, page 20a, says in the name of Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes, a Jew that does not have a sense of shame, it's a sign that their ancestors, their parents, were not at Mount Sinai. Why? Because one of the signs of a Jewish neshama is having a sense of shame. The Jewish people are different than the rest of the people in the world. There's a certain sense of shame that every Jew is supposed to have. When a Jew violates their BEIT, their covenant with Hashem, so far to the point where they've lost their sense of shame, they in essence have removed themselves so far from who they really are, it's as if their ancestors are not people that went to Mount Sinai. Now, there was once Rabbi Akiva Eiger and his dear Chacham friend Rav Yaakov Leuvenvoy. And these two giant Chachamim, about 200 years ago, 250 years ago, there's a lot of stories about them. And one time these two tzaddikim, already older, known in the entire Jewish world and otherwise, they're walking and speaking Torah, and there was a bench they were coming up on, but there was two young men, two young Jewish guys, sitting on a bench, laughing, joking around. And as the two elders were coming to the bench, the two young guys, not here, we're sitting here. Of course, the rabbis continued walking, but Rabbi Yaakov says to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, look at that, we must be at the time of Mashiach. Because it says in the Gemara Masechet Sotah, at the end of the Gemara, page 49b, it says that before Mashiach comes, chutzpah tizgeh, insolence, chutzpah, is going to be everywhere. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, I apologize, my dear friend, but that's not what chutzpah really is at the time of Mashiach. We're not quite there. The chutzpah that will exist at the time before Mashiach will be much worse, where we would be sitting on a bench already, and then two young men will walk up to us and get us to get up and say, how rude is it for these two old people to sit on a bench while we young men need to sit in it. That's the chutzpah that will exist before Mashiach will come. So 200 plus years have passed since Rabbi Akiva Eiger said this, and we literally see his words have turned into a prophecy. Well, that's what's happening in the world today. You have people walking around with an arrogance such a way where they view anyone that's older than them as inferior to them. They have bumper stickers where they say, the world belongs to the young. This is especially apparent in Israel, but I'm sure it also exists in America and other countries, where this type of arrogance, insolence, chutzpah, becomes standard in society. People admire the arrogant instead of the humble. Now, if this was it would be enough, but it's not. The lowliness of people also gets them to the point where they're not afraid to deny whatever is true and to lie. People accustom themselves to lie all the time. Like the story that Rabbi Ephraim always likes to tell me, it's always funny and it's always on point. Well, there was a liar that a group of people that knew he's a liar said, listen, if you can say a one sentence without a lie, we'll give you $10. He said, but you just said 20. Meaning that he couldn't say a single sentence without lying. Unfortunately, some people have made lying into something that's so standard in their life, they cannot even say a single sentence without lying. And they don't even realize it. Where you can call them and say, listen, we need to meet. We're going to meet at 2 o'clock. Are you on the way? Yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. The truth is, he hasn't even left the office. He's not going to be there for 45 minutes. He knows that. When he says that to you, he knows he hasn't left the office. He knows it's going to take 45 minutes. But naturally, he has no problem telling you he'll be there in 5 minutes. Or she tells you, I'll be ready in 2 minutes. She hasn't even started. She knows it's an hour and a half away. Now, she has made it such a way where it's so standard for her to say things like this. She doesn't even realize that the words that are coming out of her mouth are lies. Oh, I called you. I think I left a message. They never called. They don't even have your phone number sometimes. And this type of speech is something that a person didn't start their life with. They've actually worked themselves up to be like this, where it starts with small lies, where they lie about small things, and then they become accustomed to lying about other things, and then lying about more things, and lying about more things to the point where eventually lying becomes standard to them. They lose any sense of sensitivity towards lying. The most common thing that people lie about is business, money. People, for some reason or another, believe that to be a good salesperson, you have to be a liar. So they present things that don't actually exist in order to close the sale, and then they claim themselves as if they're good salespeople because they closed the deal. Not realizing that it wasn't their good salesmanship that closed the deal, but rather the lie. If you didn't lie to the guy, he wouldn't have bought. But with the lie that you said, you could have sold him the thing you could have sold him everything with such a lie. With the conditions you promised, there was no way for the guy not to buy. This is one of the things that's happening also in the cash advance business. There was one guy that was interviewed Guy that was in the cash advance business was interviewed by another guy that used to be in the cash advance business and now is against it. Now, in the beginning of this interview, this guy from the cash advance business says, no, I help people, I give them opportunities, even though you may not like cash advance, it's a fantastic business where I can provide people all types of other services. It didn't take but 45 minutes for this compulsive liar to admit that he's a bad person, that it's a bad business, that he causes damage to the customers, damage to society, and simply put, it's evil. And his life certainly has no ounce of happiness. He's addicted to drugs, he's or off drugs, on drugs, he's a complete lowlife. By his own doings. And such is the life of all of those liars. And I remember when I was in the investment business, there was certain people that couldn't help themselves but lie. They would lie about how much money they had. They would lie about where they went. They would lie about literally they would lie about everything. They would lie so much, they would look at you straight in your eyes and say an outright lie, but they themselves believe it's true. Now, everyone out there knows it's a lie. It's not like there's speculation of whether what he's saying is a lie. They have lied so much they started believing the lie. Now, that type of low life is a low life that wasn't made in one day. This is a low life that has worked on becoming a low life over a long period of time. And that's why the Torah says, Midvar sheker tirchak. From a thing of lies, run away from lies. Why? Because lies can become addictive. If a person doesn't realize that lying is something that is addictive, that could lead them to other lies, and the other lies can lead to more lies, and eventually they can become liars. And to stop being a liar is a lot of effort. Hence the Torah, unlike anything else, tells you stay away from lies. When it comes to murder, the Torah says don't murder. When it comes to stealing, Torah says don't steal. When it comes to everything in the Torah says don't do it. But when it comes to lying, Torah says not only don't do it, stay away from it. Why? It's addictive. It's addictive like drugs. It's addictive like all the worst things in the world. Don't even start with lying. This is also the reason when it comes to chinuch, with little kids, a lot of things that a new parent does, a parent that has more experience will not do. Meaning, a new parent that sees, let's say, for example, the bottle or the binky or, I don't know, toys or something like that fall on the floor, usually the new parent will pick them up and clean them and make sure that everything is disinfected and is like it just came out of a lab, like everything is like perfect. And, and if the kid has a little stain on their shirt, they immediately change the stain. And if the kid, has perhaps even 2 trickles in their diaper, immediately they change them. They want to be the pristine and perfect. Okay, and that's cute and everything, but it's not going to last. Why? By the time you get your second and third kid, you're not going to be able to do all those things. Eventually, that bottle or binky falls on the floor. It stays on the floor. The kid wants it. Oh, here you go. What about the cleaning and the disinfecting? He's going to throw it on the floor 5 minutes later and pick it up again. The kid just ate ants. The kid just ate rocks. Do you think it matters if he puts the binky in his... Some of these kids, they eat everything. What about the stain? The kid has a stain. He's going to have a stain. If I change the shirt, I'll have another stain. Why should I change and do more laundry? The new parent changes everything. The older parent, usually, they let a lot more things go. And that may seem like the older parent, the more veteran parent, is irresponsible. No. It's the experience tells them where to put their concern and energy in. Now, one of the places that you are supposed to put more energy in, regardless of whether you're a new parent or older parent, is in things that can influence a life. Now, if the kid jumps on a table, if the kid causes a mess, if the kid, decides to go into the kitchen and does all types of things that are not so fun to clean up. You don't need to lose your mind. Why? Because as that child will grow up, they won't do those things. They won't jump on a table anymore. They won't go and cause a mess in the kitchen. That goes away with age. On the other hand, if that kid lies, you have to say something. You have to say something. Why? Because if you don't say something to that young child that's lying, he can grow up or she can grow up to be a big liar. And that's a problem that you won't be able to fix once they grow up. So there are certain things that if you look at them from a parent's perspective and you realize, I don't need to lose my mind over this. Why? This will change with time. This will change as they get older. I don't need to get so upset at him for breaking this or jumping on this. It'll go away. As he or she gets older, it'll go away. But there are some things that are not going to go away unless you do something about it. Unless you teach your child that it's absolutely forbidden to lie. It's absolutely forbidden to not tell the Ima and Abba, the parents, the truth. It's absolutely forbidden to make fun of the Torah. It's absolutely forbidden to make fun or make a joke out of God or anything like that. It's absolutely forbidden to do things like that. Those things won't go away. They'll get worse. So there are certain things you got to let go. Why? Especially if you have more kids, you can't pay attention to all these things. Even if you want to, you can't. And there are certain things you have to pay attention. You literally have to stop your day and handle it. You have to handle certain things and tell the kid that this is unacceptable. So when it comes to the people that have become lowlives in a sense where they've become simply compulsive liars, if you ask those people, what's wrong with what you said? You said God needs you. You said that pornography is okay. You said if you smoke some marijuana to make yourself feel better before you pray or learn Torah, that's good for you. It's allowed. Like all of those things are lies. All of those things are against the Torah. But you said them. The response that those adults will give you are not going to be, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. It's going to be rationalizing the falsehood. Why? Because they've been doing it for so long that the lie has become true in their head. The lie is something that they're living with. And to uproot it is the only way to get rid of it. And that's one of the things that people don't realize, that when it comes to a lowlife that has become an adult, that has, in so many words, taken on these negative character traits where they're angry for absolutely no reason, or they're aggressive, or they are people that have these horrible character traits that we've discussed. You can't just cut these things short and think they're going to go away. It's just like saying, listen, if I cut these thorns, if I cut them a little bit, it'll stop growing here. No. It'll just grow again. It'll just grow again. It'll grow even further. HaShem instilled a certain aspect of nature where sometimes if you want something to grow, if you want a plant or a tree to grow, sometimes cutting it will actually make it grow faster and bigger. So if you cut something that's bad, you're not going to get rid of it. In fact, you may end up making it worse by simply telling that person, listen, don't say that stuff next to Jewish people. All you're doing is cutting it, because in essence what you're saying is that don't say it next to Jews, but say it next to non-Jews. Don't lend money with interest to them. What are you saying? You're saying, oh, you can do it here, but you can't do it there. The only way to get rid of a low-life trait is by uprooting it. Uprooting it means you have to make sure that the person understands that there is nothing permissible or good about what they're doing. It is never going to be okay. And the consequence for their actions are as severe gets. And for this, we need to say the next part. Some people says the Chazon Ish, that have accustomed themselves to denying the truth, accustomed themselves to lying, don't feel responsible even for their own speech, have simply gone to the point where their words have become meaningless. Meaning that it simply doesn't matter what they tell you, they will not be able to deliver on their words. And I'm afraid that from my experience of dealing with thousands and thousands of people in the world of business and otherwise, when it comes to business, I have yet to find a single person that says and does the same thing. Many people say, everyone says, few do. But to compare the two, I've yet to find a single person. Generally speaking, when you're dealing with business, people overpromise. People overpromise. Yeah, I'll get it done by Tuesday. I'll get it done for this price. I'll get it done in that place. And that price and that place and that time arrives, and these people are nowhere to be found. Oh, what happened? How come you didn't finish the job that you said you're going to finish on Tuesday? Why didn't you finish on Tuesday? Oh, I got held back because there was traffic, because I had another customer, because I had another deal, because... Yeah, but why didn't you take all that into account when you made that statement? Why can't you fulfill what you said you're going to do? Why can't you do it? And the reality is that this has become so standard in society that it's acceptable. It's acceptable for people to say one thing and do something else. Because rarely do people end relationships as a result of somebody not delivering. It's become standard to give people more time and more opportunities. Why? Because they know that even if this guy said he'll finish the job by the end of the month, and the end of the month arrived and he's not even halfway done, they know that for them to replace that person is not replacing the problem. It's just acquiring a different problem because the next guy may end up doing the same exact thing or worse. So it's better off for them to just stick with this guy and just tolerate the delay. Because the next guy, he can say, listen, I'll finish it. Yeah, I can finish it in a month. And he's not going to finish it in a month, and it's going to be another couple of months. So they figure, logically, rationally, it makes sense to just stick with this guy and suffer the pain. And this has become acceptable behavior in society, in the world, where a person simply has to tolerate a bunch of liars if he wants to do business. You have to already take into account that whatever people promise to you, they're all lying. Intentionally, unintentionally is irrelevant. It's become the standard in society. People are liars. The more money is involved, the bigger the lie usually. It's something that has become a standard in this society, meaning this aspect of life, this aspect of low lives, I should say, has become, unfortunately, a standard in society. And this is across the board. And one of the most difficult things is that when a person is one of those people that says what he does and does what he says, and he's surrounded or she is surrounded by a bunch of liars, because it simply drives you mad. Because you don't understand. Why can't they do what I'm doing? I said I'll pay on Tuesday. I paid on Tuesday. Why can't they do the job on Tuesday like they said they will do the job on Tuesday? And then you go to the next contractor, and he does the same exact thing. And then you figure, okay, maybe there's a problem with this type of profession. Okay, I'll try a different profession. And you go to the lawyer, and the lawyer does the same thing. And you go to the doctor, and the doctor does the same thing. And you go to the painter, and he does the same thing. And the contractor, and he does the same thing. And the programmer, and the literally, it's everything across the board. This is what has happened to society that is absent of Torah. Now, how is it in the world of Torah? It's literally so far away, you would think you're surrounded by aliens. I'll give you an example. Today, we had a program for 540 Torah scholars to learn the Shas. In order for us to complete the entire Shas, it's a little over 2,700 pages, dapim, and each one on the average was supposed to do 5 dapim. At the end, it was a big celebration. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu's son spoke, Rabbi Ephraim spoke, other Rabbanim spoke. It was a very big event, monumental event. And of course, Baruch HaShem, they gave out the money to the Avrechim. It was a big achievement. A lot more than just money was acquired during that day. But one of the most extraordinary things about the whole event is the stories. The stories that took place at the end. One Avrech comes to Rabbi Ephraim and he says to him, I don't know if you really should give me the money. I'm not sure if I should take it. I think there's a dean here that I have to double check if Kvodo is okay with it. Rabbi Ephraim, what happened? He says, I know that we're supposed to learn for 5 hours. And we're supposed to do at least 5 dapim. Okay? Well, I did the 5 dapim, but there was a few moments that I fell asleep a little bit. Like I nodded off a little bit. So it's not really 5 hours of learning. So I'm not sure that I can really take the money. That was an example of one Avrech. Why? He studied the 5 hours and he completed the 5 dapim, but there was a few moments that he nodded off a little bit. A few moments. And he's not sure if he's entitled to any of the money. Why? Because he nodded off a little bit. Another one. Comes to Rabbi Ephraim. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what to do. We just completed everything, but I studied for the 5 hours. But the problem is they only gave me 4 dapim. I don't have 5 dapim. They only gave me 4 dapim, and there's nothing else for me to do because we completed it. So I don't think I could get the money. Ephraim says, no, don't worry. They gave you the 4 dapim because that was the program. It's okay. You're going to get it. Yeah, but you said 5 dapim. Everybody here, they all completed 5 dapim, only a few. I don't know if I'm entitled to the money. Like he's arguing, he doesn't want the money. Now, you ask, this guy, he has kids at home. He has a wife at home. He has no money at home. The 500 shekel is a lot of money to him. He needs it. But he's not sure he's entitled to it. Why? Because why should he get a better deal than so many other people? Perhaps I don't deserve anything. In the world that we live in, your average person will tell you, what? Just 500 for 5 dapim? It should be 500 for 1 page. It's enough already. You should be happy that I'm even coming. What? I finished it in a half hour. It's okay. I'll do it later. The mentalities are so different that literally, if you hear these stories, you think that you're surrounded by aliens. Like, who is this? But this is Am Yisrael. When the Torah is referring to Am Yisrael, when the sages are talking about Am Yisrael, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Mi ke'amcha Yisrael, ach tov liYisrael, when he says, who is like your nation Israel? Who is like Israel? Who is as good as Israel? That's who he's talking about. He's not talking about the Dennis Prager's pornography minds. He's not talking about these Reshaim that changed the Torah. He's not talking about the thieves that are charging interest and destroying the economy. He's not talking about the people that are desecrating Shabbat. He's not talking about all the people that are going against God. He's not talking about them. He's talking about those wonderful people that have cleaven themselves to HaShem through His Torah and have softened their character traits to such a point that they're so far away from lies that for them to benefit from something that's not 100% glad kosher is impossible in their mind. Yeah, but you were here for 5 hours. It ended up being 7 hours because of the event and everything. Take the money. We'll give it to you. Are you sure? Maybe we should have a diyun on it. Maybe this. They're not sure. Why? Because it's not 100%. It's not 100%. The type of personalities you meet in the world of Torah, literally, that in itself would make any normal human being want to do tshuva. That in itself would make any person out there want to change themselves. Because you see that it's possible. Now, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Alav Shalom, his dear son, actually gave us the Bet Knesset, all 4 stories of it today to use for this extraordinary event for free. There was other places they wanted to take thousands and thousands of dollars from us before even charging the extra fees for cleaning and everything else. There, the Kehillah over here gave us the place, wonderful place, and on top of it, at the end of the event, they were so excited to be part of it. They said, listen, next time, let us know what we want to be a part of it. We want to be a part of it with the financials, with everything. Just let us be part of it with you. Extraordinary people. Now, this just happened? No. You see, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu was one of the Gedolei Hador, and his entire life he dedicated to Am Yisrael in a way that is not normal in the mind of a regular person. He had the custom that he took upon himself to never eat or drink in front of people. Similar to what the Chazon Ish is saying. Not to eat in front of people, but Rav Mordechai Eliyahu took it to the extreme. Took it even a higher level. Now, this would mean that as soon as he went to shul, he went to pray, there would be literally lines of people asking him questions. All type of troubled people, all types of, terrible cases, horrible cases. They all come, ask him questions, ask him for guidance, ask him for help. And he would address each and every single one of them, help each and every single one to the best of his abilities. And this would last into the afternoon, 12, 1 o'clock. And once in a while, the Rabbanit would have to get involved and say, please, let the rabbi go so he could drink. He hasn't drank since the morning because he doesn't drink in front of people. He doesn't eat in front of people. He hasn't drunk or eaten since the morning. It's 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And this would go on every day, all day, not just in the morning, but throughout the whole day. So much so that it was standard for him to have a pill for headaches on a regular basis. The Rabbanit used to say, that's his breakfast. Pills for headaches. Because he wouldn't drink, he wouldn't eat for hours. And literally every day was almost a fast. Not because he wanted to fast, because he wouldn't eat or drink in front of people. Now this would last into the nights. People would knock on his door, call his phone at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they would get an answer. They would get an answer at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Now you would think, wait a minute, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, this guy that called you, this guy that showed up at your house, he has some nerve. Why would you even answer him? Now, this would be foreign to Eliyahu. What do you mean, why wouldn't answer him? He needs me. I'm there. But it's 2 o'clock in the morning. The Rav needs to sleep. The Rav needs to rest. Couldn't wait till tomorrow. If he called me today, that means he needs me today. One time, they asked the Rabbanit, how did you live like a life like this? Your husband is like public property. Literally, he can't eat, he can't drink, he can't have time to himself. He's constantly helping people, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning even. How did you live like this? And the Rabbanit gives the answer. She says, because throughout our entire lives, we always put everyone else in front of ourselves. Meaning that we understood that HaShem put us in this position to help, but he could have easily put us in a position to be the one in need. So because we saw this guy has a problem, we realized it could be us that has that problem. But Baruch Hashem, we don't have that problem. We have the ability to help this problem. And therefore we put ourselves in a situation where we empathize. And we realize that if he has this problem, if he's coming to us and he has this problem, that means that he can't handle it by himself. We need to help him. Whether it was this problem or that problem, we put ourselves in their shoes. Now what happens when you put yourself in other people's shoes, where you start visualizing yourself as if you're the one that has the problem? that's where the lowlifeness starts becoming cured. You see, the Chazon Ish says that these people that have these horrible traits, Mussar cannot even help them. Mussar cannot even help them because they're not willing to change. They're not willing to even view their problem as a problem. But there is one thing that can cure all of it, that can allow them to become a vessel to accept Mussar, by simply using what's called empathy. Empathy means, by definition, viewing yourself as if you are in the other person's shoes, as if you are the one that has the problem that he has. If somebody comes to you with financial problems, he doesn't have any money, he's poor. Now if you view yourself as yourself, and this poor guy is asking for help to get money for a wedding for his daughter, to get money to pay for a bill, and you view yourself as yourself, then you're saying, listen, why should I help this guy? Okay, maybe I have extra. Okay, maybe you'll help him. Or you want to make yourself feel good? Maybe you help them. But what if you don't have that much extra, or you don't feel like helping him? Then you won't help him. But if you view yourself in his shoes, you'll see things very differently. Because you'll see, wait a minute, what if I was in need to get money to wed off my daughter? What if I was in need to get money so I could buy food for my kids? What if I was in need to get money to pay the rent so they don't kick me out of the house? And I came to this person that has a house and has 2 cars and has an expensive watch and has a stock portfolio and has an investment account and a retirement account, and I came to him for help. I would want him to help me. I would expect him to help me. And if they didn't help me, that would be very, very detrimental. Because if somebody like that won't help me, who will? Somebody came to the Rav Ponevezher when he was building his YESHIVA for over 1,000 bachurim. There were only 400 bachurim in the entire country of Israel. It was right after the Holocaust. People thought he was crazy. They even sent him a psychologist to assess him, and the psychologist realized and assessed that he is not only all there, he's more all there than everybody else. But when one of these donors came to Rabbi Ponevezher and he asked him, why should I donate all of this when I view the Jewish world different, unusual. Jewish people are unusual. Now this was a successful Jew, apparently wasn't the most religious, or at least most knowledgeable about all Jews, and he asked Rabbi Ponevezher for some help, some guidance. Why should I donate more money to the Jews than the Goyim? He said, why? He says, because when I donate money to the Jews, they always ask for more. When I donate even a little bit of money to the Goyim, they thank me, they're grateful. Why? He says, because the Jews that you're donating to usually are their Torah scholars. He goes, yeah, always. It's Torah scholars coming to me and I give them some money for the yeshiva, I give them some money for the kollel, I give them some money for weddings, all the different things. He says, and the goyim that are coming to you, the non-Jews that are coming to you, they're not Torah scholars. Because no, they're regular people, poor people. People that are trying to do something. And you're asking why the Jews are asking for more. He said, yeah. He says, you see, the Jew that comes to you, him being a Torah scholar, that means that he's constantly reflecting. He's constantly reflecting on what he would do if he was in a different position, how he could fix himself, how he could better himself. So when he comes to you, he's not just coming to you to ask for a donation, to ask for help. He's also assessing himself and how he behaves. And when he assesses himself, he says, wait a minute, what would I do if I was in the rich man's position. If I had the $5 million house and the garage full of cars and the expensive watch collection and the investment portfolio and the real estate portfolio, and somebody came to me and said, listen, I need $150,000 in order to take care of this problem, to build this yeshiva, to build this, to do this, and somebody came to me, of course I would help them. If I have all this money, I would give them. That's what the Torah scholar is thinking to himself. So when you give that Torah scholar $100 or $200 or $500, it's nice, it's good, thank you. But he immediately thinks, well, if I was him, I would give the whole thing. I would give $150,000, not $500. So immediately he says, okay, can I have some more for my friend? Can I have some more for my wife? Why? Because he's already thinking that if he was you, he would give much more. And since you're not really giving that much more, he's asking, okay, so maybe at least you can give for somebody else too. Maybe he can at least give some more out of this more that he would have given. When the Arab comes, when the Christian comes, when the Buddhist comes, when all of these other religions come to you, they're not doing the same calculation. Why? When they come to you, they do a different calculation. They're not saying, listen, if I was in a position and I had the house, $5 million, and the jet, and the car full of, the garage full of cars, and the watch collection, and the real estate portfolio, and everything else, they're not saying, oh, I would give. You know what they're saying? If I was in this guy's position, I would have a much better gate system, and I wouldn't let all of these lowlifes come to my house. Do you know why? Because the Torah scholar learns Torah. The others, they don't. So they're always looking at it from their perspective. If they were rich, they will protect their wealth, just like you are. So when you give them even $100, they're so amazed that you gave them anything. They're like, wow, thank you so much. They don't ask for anything else. Why? Because they didn't even expect $100 from you. Because in their mind, if they were you, they wouldn't give the guy anything. They would have a better gate, so he wouldn't be able to enter. So when you gave them something, you broke their entire MO, and they're thinking, wow, this guy gave me something that's wonderful. That's why they're so grateful. The Jew, on the other hand, he's thinking, if I was you, I would give much more. And since you're not giving much more, that's why he asks for more. That's the difference. That's the difference. Rabotai Yekarim, when a person works on their character traits and realizes that these types of teachings are not something so far away to fix. If a person is arrogant, there's a solution. If a person is a liar, there's a solution. If a person is stingy, there's a solution. If a person has any negative trait, there's a solution. The solution is empathy. Put yourself in other people's shoes, where you think, what if I was them? So if, let's say, for example, if you have a problem with lying, you're always lying. Somebody asks you, are you going to be there on time? And you say yes, and you know you're not going to be there. Are you going to pay on time? You say yes, and you know you're not going to be there. So now think about it. What if you were the other guy and you ask somebody, listen, are you going to pay me on time? And the other guy says, yes, I'll pay you on time. But you know, for you, you're going to take what he says seriously. Why? Because you need that money that he's going to pay you so you can pay your water bill, so you can pay your electric bill, so you can pay for food, for groceries to feed your kids. So when he doesn't pay you on time, that means that you can't buy food for your kids. That means that you can't pay the electric bill, and then they shut down the electric in your house or in your office, and you can't do business. When you don't pay on time, that means that he cannot pay the water bill. He has to go to embarrass himself in his next door neighbor, in his house, and ask him if he could take a shower in his house, or at least the kids could take a shower there. So he took you seriously when you said you're going to pay on time and you didn't. You changed his entire life. So if you're in that position where you are lying to people about things that you're saying and you don't think it's a big deal, the way to realize it's a big deal, simple. Put yourself in other people's shoes. If somebody was on the other end and you needed the money, would you care if they lied? Of course you would. If you needed that meeting, that appointment, if the clock was very important to you, why? Because you had a second meeting. And the other guy said, yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And in reality, he knew he's not going to be there for another hour. And that meant that this guy had to either give up on this meeting or give up on the next meeting in order to accommodate your lateness. If the guy was saying, listen, I'm going to pay you a few $1,000s every single month for 3, 4, 5 months so you can deliver me a certain product. And you say, sure, I can do it. And in reality, you're not sure if you can do it. You hope you can do it. You assume you can do it. But if you don't do it, no big deal. What you're not realizing, that this guy, he himself promised somebody else that he's going to have this product. And that somebody else said, listen, that's your last shot. If you don't give me that product on that time, I'm cutting all business ties with you. So your little careless lie could have easily led to this guy declaring bankruptcy. Could have easily led to this guy getting fired and losing his job and having to go on the unemployment line, hoping that they give him a few dollars so he could feed his kids. You see, when you start thinking about the consequence of the lie, when it affects you, it becomes easier to not lie anymore. Now, if a person says, no, I'm not lying about money, I'm lying about other things, small things. I just like to change things. What if somebody said those small things to you? If you had a question that was very, very important to you, and you asked them, do you know the answer? And say, yeah, of course I know the answer. It's ABC. In reality, they don't know the answer. They're just pretending like they know. But you thought that they actually knew. Why? Because when they said, I know, it sounded so confident that you're like, wow, so this guy knows it's ABC. So now you take that answer and you tell all your friends, you tell your teachers, hey everybody, I found out the answer. And now there's 500 people that are ready to hear the answer from you. Guys, I found out the answer. It's ABC. And everyone just starts laughing at you. Saying, are you stupid? What ABC? ABC is the letters in the alphabet. That's not the answer. And now you have to feel dumb in front of 500 people. Why? Because this guy thought it's not a big deal to lie. But he didn't think that you're going to take him seriously and then publicize this answer to 500 people or even to the entire world on the internet. You see, when you don't think that lying is a big deal, you start lying on small things that to you are small, but to somebody else it could be big. To somebody else it could be very big. Imagine a time where there's two guys. And one of these guys sees that there is a young woman in the same event. And he says to his person, you know this girl? You know that woman? Oh, yeah, sure, I know. And he says, is she single or is she married? And his friend thinks it's funny that perhaps he's he knows the girl is married, but he thinks it'll be funny that if this guy approaches her anyway thinking that she's single and not married, and she shuts him down and tells him I'm married, and he gets embarrassed. So he says, no, she's not married, she's single. Okay, thank you. Now, to his surprise, he doesn't do anything. And they part ways. A month later, the young man says to him, hey, I have a problem. What's the problem? Problem is that some husband want to kill me. Excuse me? What husband wants to kill you? Some guy that says he's a husband of the girl that you said was single wants to kill me. What are you talking about? He says, remember we were at that event and I pointed at that girl and I told you, is she single? And you said, yes, she's single because you knew her. Well, when I approached her later, she said, she didn't say she was married, and I didn't ask her. And we had coffee and we talked, and before you know it, I get a phone call from some guy that says he is our husband. And now it's not funny anymore. Now that little lie is not funny anymore. You see, when a person is not careful with the small lies, it's only a matter of time before those small lies become big lies. They may not be a big lie to you, but it could become a big lie to somebody else. Because somebody else can take what you're telling them as true and publicize it and use it. And think that what you said is 100% true. So when you want to get out of the world of lying, just think like this. What would I think? What would I feel if somebody lied to me? How would I feel if they lied to me about something small? How would I feel if they lied to me about something big? How would I feel if they lied to me about whether it's a yes or whether it's a no? And the answer to all of them is the same. I wouldn't feel good. Nobody likes to be lied to. So if you don't like to be lied to, if you don't like people to promise you things that they can't do, if you don't like people stealing from you, if you don't like people cheating you, don't do it to other people. Now, if you sometimes forget, before you say anything to anybody else, think for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. How would I feel if that happened to me? Meaning, you want to respond to somebody with something, but before you respond, think, how would I feel if somebody responded to me with the answer I'm giving him? If you wouldn't feel good, don't do it to somebody else. That's why Hillel told the person that wanted to convert, who said he wants to learn the entire Torah on a single leg, on a single foot. Hillel said, don't do unto others what you don't want done to you. Meaning that if a person takes that part into perspective, they realize that the entire Torah is standing on this. Why? Because if you don't want someone lying to you, you won't lie. If you don't want someone to hurt you, you won't hurt. If you don't want someone making fun of your father, you won't make fun of somebody else's father. That means you won't make fun of HaShem. If you don't want someone to ignore you, you won't ignore HaShem. If you don't want someone to hurt you, you won't hurt Am Yisrael, you won't hurt HaShem, you won't hurt the Goyim, you won't hurt anybody. In so many words, if you actually think of things from a point of empathy, you automatically become a righteous person. Because everyone wants only good for themselves. And if you think of things that way, where you are only going to do things to other people, say things to other people, in the way that you want to yourself, automatically, you become more righteous. And that doesn't mean that everybody around you become righteous. But it's more important that you become righteous than to worry about everybody else around you. Because everyone around you that doesn't become righteous, they'll have plenty of regrets. They'll have plenty of regrets for not doing it. And as a final motivation, for anyone that needs that motivation to change, anyone that needs the motivation to do teshuvah, we made a couple of movies called Chibut HaKever and Gehinnom, which go into more details. But there is a Mussar shiur that I heard from Rav Meir Eliyahu, Shichyeh, and he put these few words into perspective in such a fashion that it's either going to touch your neshama and light it up to make you excited to do teshuvah, motivated to do teshuvah, scared not to do teshuvah, or it's simply going to be as if nothing happened. Now, the longer you're alive, the more people you meet that end up dying. As I told you last week, one of the guys that I knew from childhood, named Asi, died. And over the years, many people that I know have died. So you realize that death is simply a part of life. It happens. What happens the moment a person dies? There's a lot of details, but there is one detail that's critical and very important to know. The Zohar, in Parashat Lech Lecha, page 79, says the moment a person dies, there are three angels that they see. The first angel tells them about the mitzvot that they did. The second angel tells them about all the sins that they did. The third angel tells them about every single moment that they lived in their life and what they did with that moment. The Zohar Chadash, page 31a, says that the moment a person dies and they see their body, they lose their mind. Why do they lose their mind? They lose their mind because they now see the truth for what it is. And the feeling of sorrow of why they did not do teshuvah. The Gaon Vilna says that there is a level of teshuvah that is so high, that is so extraordinary, that is so strong, that it is impossible for a living human being to truly comprehend it. This is the teshuvah that happens from the feelings that a person gets as their body is moved from wherever they died to being buried. And during that time, that neshama that is floating on top of the body that's there cannot comprehend how they missed the opportunity to do teshuvah, how they spent their life chasing materialism that they can't take with them, how they spent their life chasing money that's going to be given to other people, how they spent their life acquiring Gehinnom and not heaven. And this neshama is shown the joys of heaven and also the horrors of Gehinnom. This neshama cannot comprehend how it did this to itself, and there is no turning back. No one can help him. No one can reverse it. What's done is done. And the Gaon Vilna says that at that moment, the broken heart from the feelings of sorrow that neshama has causes all of its senses to lose their mind, causes all of their senses to simply go haywire. To the point where if a person that was still alive would have only 1/1000th of this feeling, then all of their senses would be completely eliminated to the point where they would not be able to function and they would die on the spot. Now, if a person truly understands that the moment a person dies, the only feeling that they have is not about money, is not about things. It's not about recognition. It's not about anything else other than, did I fix myself to become a servant of HaShem or not? And if they didn't, the level of sorrow that neshama has is beyond anything that a human being can comprehend. So much so that even 1,000th of it would kill a person instantly. And they only get the power and the strength to handle this complete feeling after they die, as part of their punishment. So if a person was not motivated or inspired after 2 hours of rationalizing and breaking down all of the reasons of why they need and should fix themselves, then perhaps the only thing that can help these people is to realize that whatever you're doing that's against HaShem, you will regret it more than you can imagine. BeEzrat HaShem, this too will be enough to inspire every single person that watches this or even speaks about it to do complete teshuvah, serve HaShem, and empathize with all those that are around him or her. With that being said, I'll take a couple of questions before we end the night. See? Okay, question. If you are guilty, would you believe you deserve the maximum punishment? Okay, so to rephrase the question, as far as maximum punishment or not maximum punishment, a person needs to understand that only the whoever's in charge is the one that determines what the punishment is. And the reason why is because whoever's in charge is the one that realizes the consequences of everything much more than the person that is the perpetrator. Now, if you look at the world of the Creator from only your perspective, then you'll see, wait a minute, if I stole, or if I killed, or if I did whatever horrible things, and then why do I need to get such a punishment that's going to last millions of years or thousands of years, or even 5 minutes in Gehinnom? Like, why do I need to get such a horrible punishment when the punishment is so severe? That's because you're only looking at it from your perspective. Now, if you would look at it from the perspective of others, now, if a person kills another person, they're not realizing they're also killing somebody's son or daughter. And the horror that those parents have to go through, living a life where their son or daughter is now no more, is a horror that's not going to go away throughout their entire life. Even more so, if you realize the horror that a person goes through if it's their husband or their wife. The nightmare of being a widow is not something that goes away with time, even if the person gets remarried. Last but not least, the children. Person that their parent gets murdered, that suffering doesn't go away, and many times it causes trauma to the kids for their entire life, unless those kids have somebody helping them specifically with this. I'll give you an example that perhaps is as relevant to the entire shiur of low lives as it can get. There's actually something that happened some years ago where there was a Jewish woman religious Jewish woman in Eretz Yisrael, that she was walking with her husband and their son. And this was near the borders over there where there's a lot of Arabs. And one of these evil Arabs attacked the husband and started stabbing him repeatedly. And after stabbing him a bunch of times, Eventually, the Arab left. The wife ran away with the son, and by the time she got the soldiers to come, there were soldiers around the corner. By the time they got the soldiers to come, the husband, who was a Chassid, he already died. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, listen to what happens after. Now, this story of a woman and her son watching her husband, the kid's father, get murdered right in front of them by an Arab, Palestinian. And, it doesn't get any more horrible than that. So you would think that anyone that would cross their path, obviously should help them, should do everything, and that's what it seemed like it was happening. This story spread all over the country. It was all over the news. It was obviously a trauma that the Jewish people as a whole took upon themselves. And while this woman was sitting Shiva, the week of mourning, some guy that came up there and said, "Listen, I want to help you. I was very moved by what happened. I want to help you. I want to raise some money for you to at least help you, because obviously you're in no shape to work. Your husband was was providing. I want to help you. Let me help you, and to show you my appreciation and to show you the how much I want to help. I want you to go with your son and your mom to a hotel. I'll pay for the whole thing." So the woman, after she finished sitting Shiva, they went to a hotel of their choice, and they were there for 2 weeks. During these 2 weeks, this guy publicized this event even more than what it was, publicized the campaign online, something I'm sure all of you have seen before, these campaigns online, telling people, listen, this woman is a victim of terrorism. She's our sister. She has a son. The son doesn't have a father anymore. We need to help her. And it touched a lot of people's hearts. So much so that within these couple of weeks, he raised nearly $1 million, which in Israel terms is a lot. It's a lot of money. Now, he raised nearly $1 million. The woman is in the hotel for nearly 2 weeks. As the 2 weeks came up, the guy disappeared. She was ready to leave, and the hotel told her, okay, we need you to pay 50,000 shekels. She says, what are you talking about? The person paid for it. She says, no. He didn't pay for anything. He left the card on file, but the card doesn't work. She called the guy. His number is disconnected. He disappeared. Ran away with nearly $1 million of money that people donated to her. This woman obviously broke again, started crying hysterical at the hotel. They brought the owner of the hotel. He made some phone calls to verify the story. The story was a national story. He verified, he realized that all of this actually happened. They verified the guy ran out of the country. He took all the money. And the owner of the hotel had a Jewish neshama, a really nice guy, and he ended up, letting it go, and she didn't have to pay. But the level of low life that thief was, believe it or not, is not as bad as you would think if you compare them to some of the people we mentioned. Meaning that he damaged a single person. He caused damage to a single person. He caused damage to her. Obviously, she didn't get money that she thought she was going to get. He put her in debt, which Baruch Hashem was solved. That the hotelier actually gave up on it. It's fine. But in so many words, he damaged her. So you would think, okay, so he deserves a punishment for causing her damage, even more so, like hit on top of a hit. But that's when you look at it from just a minimal perspective. What you're not realizing is that he also caused damage to all of those people that donated. Because all of the people that donated, they were looking to do a good thing. They were looking to help somebody. Either because it makes them feel good, or because it was going to be a mitzvah, or a combination of both. Now they're going to arrive in Shemaim, and they're going to look for this mitzvah, and they won't be able to find it. Why? Because it wasn't a mitzvah to donate to a thief. It wasn't a mitzvah. So he now stole a piece of heaven from all of those people. Now, of course, they deserve what they got because of whatever reason they have in Shemaim. HaShem didn't want their money to go to a mitzvah. But the point being is, he was the tool that was used to steal mitzvahs from people. Now, when a person teaches the public things that are against the Torah, it's not just misleading them about what the truth is by telling them that it's okay to think about bad things, or telling them that God needs you instead of you need God, all types of distortions of the Torah. It's not just misleading them and telling them something that's not true. It's also getting them to think that what is true is false and what is false is true. In so many words, you are changing the path of this person's life forever, and their kids forever, and their spouse forever. And you could literally take a person that was on the path to heaven and literally with a single speech change his path, his kid's path, his grandkid's path, and all of the other people's path, all to Gehinnom, until somebody wakes up to verify the lie. So the consequence of the guy that stole $1 million, believe it or not, is less than the consequence that happens to the Pragers and the Manis Friedmans and the Goldbergs of the world. Because while he damaged some people monetarily, it's a contained damage. Huge, but contained. Whereas teaching the public things that are against the Torah, En maspikin be'ado la'asot teshuvah, says the Gemara. Someone that's a Machti Et Harabim, someone that causes the public to sin, HaShem does not even allow those people to do teshuvah. Why? Because the damage that they cause is irreparable. Now, what does it mean he doesn't let them do teshuvah? It means that only after an immense amount of suffering and sacrifice is it even remotely possible for those people to get on the right path again, because they have to fix so much damage that they've caused. So if we look at things from only our perspective, then we will see the damage as very limited, and thereby judge that the damage only deserves a small punishment. But if we see the bigger perspective of all those that we cause damage to, and all the damage that that can cause, and the domino effect of all the damage that all this can bring, we realize, that's the reason why the sentence in Gehinnom could be forever for this person. That's why the damage for this person is that they have to suffer in this world and that world and everything else. That because the damage is much bigger than just what you think. So it's important for a person to understand that their perspective is not necessarily and usually ever the entire perspective. Their perspective is a human limited perspective. And God, it's an unlimited perspective. And hence the reason why a person needs to take into account that if the Torah says it, it's true. If the Torah says it, it's righteous. If the Torah says it, it's the best thing in the world. And anyone that thinks that Gehinnom is limited to only 12 months or 11 months is simply clueless and ignorant about the Torah, because there's literally thousands upon thousands of verses and places in the Torah that talk about judgment being forever. One example is simply Parashat Korach. Parashat Korach talks about how Korach, the ground swallowed him and his people that followed him, and he's there till this day. Anyone that simply looks at the Jewish calendar will see that 3,334 years have passed since Korach has been swallowed by Gehinnom. That's obviously a lot longer than 11 or 12 months. Anyone that looks at the Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, page 17a or 16b, says over there clearly that Gehinnom for some people will be forever, not 12 months. And on and on and on. Anyone that wants to see the sources, there's a movie that we made called Gehinnom the Movie. Over there we included 172 sources. Once you've gone over those, I can send you another 5,000 to 6,000 more that say exactly the same thing as I said, which is that Gehinnom is not 11 or 12 months like people sometimes think. It is much, much longer than that. And also, logically speaking, it's not possible for Gehinnom to be only 11 or 12 months because a person sins more than once, and two, all sins are not the same. So to say that Gehinnom is only 12 months or 11 months for everybody, that means that God simply cares less about the magnitude of sin. There's no such thing as omek adin, which is the depth of judgment, which is a teaching of itself, and he's judging someone that's a murderer of one person the same thing as he's judging a thief, or he's judging a person that murdered one as the same thing as he judged a person that murdered 50. Obviously, this is not the case even in this world, needless to say, in the eternal world. So a person needs to educate themselves before they make silly judgments or assessments about things they're not aware of and have not learned about. And I would highly recommend watching the film, because the film has on the screen listed 172 sources that you could look at, double check, and there's many, many more beyond that. Okay, next question. No, it's not an illusion, Kapala. It's not an illusion of more than 11 months. You're simply clueless about the truth, and you want it to be 11 months. You want to be a criminal your whole life and only get a maximum sentence of 11 months. That's what it is. It's that people want to be criminals and they want the judgment to be minimal. Is Israel in World War III? Currently, World War III hasn't officially begun according to the news, but if you're talking about Gog Magog, Gog Magog already started some time ago. I've been making excuses as to why I don't have time to put on tefillin, but this inspired me. Baruch HaShem, Chazak Baruch. Chazak Baruch. Let's see. Disregard all the missionary Christians that are telling you to love their idol. It's simply in their blood to be missionaries. They don't know the difference between right or left. Anyone that's coming to missionize on this channel is simply, a lost case. Okay. I don't see anything else that's relevant to the shiur, so okay. And, okay, that's it. All right, guys. Baruch Hashem. Thanks again for learning with me. BeEzrat Hashem, on Tuesday night we'll have our next shiur. Wednesday night, I'm not sure if we're going to do any shiurim on next week because we have Pesach to get prepared for. So this may be the last Jewish HaShkafa for some time, for a couple of weeks. But again, stay to keep up to date with when the shiurim are going to be and all that stuff. Just join our WhatsApp group, either by clicking on the link that's on the different YouTube pages and everywhere else that we publicize it, or simply sending a text message to me, 1917-468-2324. No phone calls, just text messages to WhatsApp, and I can add you to the group after I confirm that you are not a missionary. Aside from that, anyone that wants to donate to the campaign to help the poor people in Eretz Yisrael, to help publicize Torah, to help us do all the good things that we're doing, is more than welcome to either donate on the website, BeEzratHashem.org, or the campaign for Pesach, bhpesach.org. There's still hundreds of families that we are going to be feeding during this week. So anyone that wants to be part of it is more than welcome to. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.
Thank you.